Hi, I'm Janine and this is Janine Sews. This is my Friday Sews video for Friday, December 15th, 2023. And today I'm going to share with you 3 things that I've made, something that I'm working on, and just a little bit about what else is going on in life. A few weeks ago, I shared with you my sewing project planner, where I attempted to be very well organized so I could get everything done and be able to sit back and relax from December 15th onward. Well, it's December 15th. Let's see how I've done. I finished 3 items on the list this week, and I'm well on the way through a 4th. And I'm going to show you those 3 items and where I am with the 4th, and I might be able to add a couple of little things in the next week. So what did I get done this past week? Well, the first garment is the one that I'm wearing. And I showed you this fabric a couple of weeks ago. This is a digital chenille from Fabricland here, and I bought 2 meters of this. Even though it's a really childish print, I just loved it. It's cozy and it's a fun and bright print, and I do like having some juvenile style prints, especially times like Christmas and dead of winter. I just can't wear all dark colors all the time. I do like to have some color and some whimsy in life. Now, when I showed you this fabric, I had said that my plan was to use New Look 6689. And I was going to make this top, and it's got this nice knot on it, which I figured would add some interest and maybe add a hint of a waist. Well, I was about to cut it out, and then I took a good look at the line drawing here. And what is there? A big honkin' seam right down the front of the top. And I know why it's there. It's there so you can create the knot. But I didn't really have a lot of extra fabric. So I was concerned that I wouldn't be able to match the pattern perfectly, and it would be difficult to match a pattern like this, especially on a fabric that stretches and can distort. But then I started thinking about this knot, which looks really cute on a lightweight drapey fabric, but this fabric isn't super lightweight. And I kind of imagined, I was doing my little croquis in my mind, just decided it wasn't going to look good. So I set this pattern aside. I do have the viscose waffle knit that I might use to make this for myself, but I just set it aside for now. So I looked back at some of the patterns that I've used in the past. I didn't want to make a sweatshirt, I didn't want to make a t-shirt, and I looked at the Love Notions Arlington, which I had used just earlier this year. Here's a video on the top that I made using the Arlington pattern. The last time I made it, I used French terry, and I was kind of sad to not have enough fabric to do a cowl neck. But this time around, I had plenty of fabric. I could do the cowl neck. I liked the shape of the top. I like the slightly puffed sleeves, which are still on trend as far as I know. So I thought I'd use that pattern and give it a try. Interestingly, one of you commented in last week's video that the Love Notions Arlington is your favorite pattern. So it seems I'm in good company in liking this particular pattern. So I cut it out. I added a smidge to the seam allowances because this fabric has just barely 20% stretch, and the French terry that I had 40% stretch. So I just wanted to add a little bit more ease to it. I could have added a bit more to the sleeves. They fit, they're not too tight, but there isn't any extra space if I wanted to wear a base layer underneath this. Not that I would, because the fabric's really cozy. So I just added a little bit to the sides, maybe a total of ½ inch to the sides, and I also added a bit in length to the front and the back. and I had forgotten. This is something I have to remind myself of, and I have to note it on the pattern. When I made the French terry version, it was shorter in the front than the back. And I don't know if that's because of my shape, because I had used the full bust option, but I have to remember to add more to the front so that the front and the back are level. So I wound up, fortunately I had added some extra length, so I wound up with like maybe a 3/4 of an inch hem at the front and an 1.5 inch hem at the back. But it was an easy sew, and it's a nice shape, and I like the cowl neck. I'm just now waiting for some really cold weather so that I can enjoy this top, because right now it's not super cold out. So it could be a little bit warm, but this will be a nice cozy top to wear in the dead of winter. That was item number 1 to check off on the list. The second and third things that I made are both gifts for my husband. And the first is a t-shirt. The pattern I used is the Woodley Tee. And this is from Thread Theory. When Thread Theory announced a year or so ago that they were going to stop doing printed patterns, I picked up a few patterns. And this one is for a basic t-shirt or one with color blocking on it. I would have very much liked to do color blocking, but I didn't have appropriate fabric. But the fabric that I used is the poly that I bought when we were in Hawaii in September. And this is just a nice tropical print. It feels very much like an athletic knit. It's not heavy, so it should breathe nicely. And I just used the basic t-shirt pattern. I did have a piece of ribbing that I thought wasn't a perfect match, but I thought it was okay with this. So I did the neck with this ribbing and sewed it up really fast on the serger, and my cover stitch worked perfectly. Seems the more that I use it, the better it works. So I was able to just do the nice top stitching on it, and everything looks good on the inside. So this was a super fast make. If the cover stitch and the serger work well, then I can do a t-shirt like this in about, I know some of you can do things like this in 45 minutes, probably 2.5 hours. That's how long it takes me, but that's super fast, and this will just be something good to take on vacation. The second item that I made is another gift for my husband. And he's around somewhere, but I'm assuming he's not lurking at the door listening. A couple of years ago, I made him a hoodie, and I used the Thread Theory Finlayson pattern for that. And I decided to use it again and make him a shawl collar sweater using digital chenille print that I picked up at Fabricland. So I'm gonna take a couple of pictures and stick them in, because it's really hard to show this on the camera. But this is, again, it's the same fabric as this. It's just a little bit more mature print. And this is a shawl collared men's shirt, pullover, sweater. It has, again, the shawl collar or a hoodie option. And then there's a separate piece for facing in the back, which means that you wind up with the upper back a little bit warmer because there's the lining on it. B, a perfect place for a label, but then you also get the nice seam on the back that kind of makes it look a little more substantial. This pattern also has cuffs at the hem and on the sleeves. And for the contrast fabric, I just used a remnant of some black French terry that I had around from a top that I made a couple of years ago. The pattern is drafted really well, and I know that some people struggle with shawl collar instructions. This one is easy. It was also easy when I did the hoodie a couple of years ago for him. it goes together very nicely. I did not do it perfectly. One corner is off a smidge, but that doesn't impact the wearing and it doesn't look terrible. But the instructions are very good, and it winds up being a relatively quick make because, again, you can do the whole thing on a serger. I did not, especially the neck. I wanted to make sure it was lined up right. So I stitched that first and then I serged it. But in the end, you wind up with something that can go in the wash, and it can be worn a lot and washed a lot. So it'll be just as cozy as this, but not quite as childish. So these are the 3 garments that I finished this week. What I'm working on today is rope bowls. I went to a class a year ago in the fall and learned to make rope bowls, and I just became obsessed with them. I just love them. They're fun to make, and I think that they're always nice to just, if you've got somewhere where things tend to collect, just throw a rope bowl down and you can put things in them. I've got one in the front entry where I put my keys and coins and things like that. Rather than having a glass bowl or a ceramic bowl, I just think that they're a nice look. And they're very monochromatic, so they go with pretty much any decor. So this is one I'm working on now. This is about 45 minutes of work, and it probably needs about another 45 minutes to build the sides up. I may put a little bit of fabric on the sides, wrap some strips of fabric, or I may do some lattice on it. But they're really fun to make. And I think it's the kind of thing where if you give it to somebody and they don't really like it, they can just throw it underneath a sink or something and put some stuff in it. So I've checked off most of the things on my list that I'd planned to do for Christmas. There's one item that was on here that I'm going to take off. I'm not going to make it. And there's a couple of things that I've added on that are kind of the next couple of week projects. The first is the Mood Karri top. I made that for So Frugal in the spring, and one of the viewers reached out and asked me if I noticed when I wore it that I flashed everybody, and yeah, I noticed that after I'd worn it twice and I looked at pictures. But when you raise your arms in that top with the tulip sleeves, you totally see, like almost down to your waist. So I've been trying to figure out how to fix that. And I've tried tacking the sleeves in different ways. That doesn't seem to be working. So while I'm thinking about it, while it's hanging here, and I know I still have fabric scrap, I'm going to try and sort that out. I do have the French jacket sew along, which is continuing on, and I think this week I'll probably tack in the sleeves to the toile and see how it looks then, so that I can cut the fabric or send the fabric out to be steamed or whatever needs to be done in early January. Then we have our sewing meetup on Sunday. We are having a meetup, even though it's the week before Christmas. Not all of us have huge lists of things to do, so we did decide to have a meetup in December. A couple of the other members of the meetup and I are doing a sew along. We're going to make this top. Nice knit top, which is great for this time of year. I have an idea for fabric, but I'm going to take a close look at the pattern before I decide if I'm going to use this fabric. I've had in my stash for quite a while. So those are the main things I'm working on. I might make some little sleeves for the cat's collars, use Christmas fabric for that, just so they have a little bit of color and brightness. And I won't make them costumes because they hate them. But that's about it for the sewing room. We're in that funny time of year when, you know, we're all kind of running towards a prize, and in this case it's whatever celebrations are going to take place in the next week or so. And there are some other things that I'm going to be doing this week. I'm going to make nuts and bolts and cookies for people, for friends, for neighbors, for family. So I'm going to be making those this week. I love making nuts and bolts because I love having nuts and bolts around the house. So hopefully I'll be able to make a lot and ship most of them out of the house before I eat them all. So I'm going to make cutout cookies, and I've got all kinds of cookie cutters for Christmas. But last year I saw an ad in Sew News magazine, and somebody was making cookie cutters that were sewing machines and spools of thread. So I ordered those and I got them in the spring. Well, when I got them, I realized that these cookies would only look like sewing machines or spools of thread if I actually decorated them so that they would look like those things. So you have to actually pipe the icing on them, and I've never really done much piped icing. But this week, while I'm making cutout cookies for Christmas, I am going to cut out some sewing machines and spools of thread and try to pipe on them to see if I can make them look like what they're supposed to be. I've learned how to decorate cookies on my list of things to do for like 6 months. So I'm finally going to try that this week. Got some running around to do, visit my mom, drop things off at people's homes, do a good clean of the house since people will be around. I'm going to clean carpets and get all kinds of stuff done around the house before the new year happens. And in my mind, I'm really thinking about what I'm going to do in 2024, what goals I'm going to set, and what I accomplished in 2023. And I spent a little bit of time yesterday on my blog, which I have not paid any attention to. I'm going to change the design of that. I think I actually already hit the button that changed the design, but I have to go back and take a look at that. So it's kind of that less action, more thought time of year. So just get these other couple of little things done, and then we'll see what the next week holds. So that's what's going on. I'll be back next week, and I'll show you how these cookies went, show you how the rope bowls did, and see if I've changed my mind and I've torn up the sewing room and I'm making a huge mess again. I hope everything is great in your world. As always, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next Friday. Take care.